The first thing I felt was silk against my skin, cool and foreign. Wrong. My eyelids weighed 1,000 pounds, but I forced them open, blinking against sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. A penthouse, not mine. I tried to sit up, but pain lanced through my ribs, stealing my breath. My head throbbed, a relentless pounding that made the room tilt. I looked down. I was wearing a man's shirt, black, expensive. Panic clawed up my throat as I pushed myself upright, ignoring the protest of bruised muscles. The shirt smelled of sandalwood and something darker, gunpowder maybe. The scent was oddly familiar, though I couldn't place why. "Where am I?" I whispered to the empty room. Fragments of memory flashed like broken glass. The Hermitage Museum Restoration Lab, working late on the Venetian piece, the weight of eyes on my back, a shadow moving too quickly. Then, nothing. The bedroom was minimalist, masculine. No photos, no personal touches beyond a silver watch on the nightstand, worth more than my annual salary. I pulled the shirt lower over my thighs and stood on shaking legs. My clothes were nowhere to be seen. The bedroom opened to a sprawling living area, all chrome, glass, and obsidian stone. The St. Petersburg skyline spread beyond the windows, the morning sun glinting off the Neva River in the distance. I wasn't just in any penthouse. I was in one of the exclusive towers in the financial district. I moved quietly, bare feet silent on marble floors. On a desk in the corner, security monitors displayed feeds from throughout the building, armed men at every exit, in the lobby, the garage. Not standard security. These men had the hard eyes and watchful stance of killers. My breath hitched when I spotted a glass cabinet against the far wall. Inside, an array of weapons displayed with disturbing precision, handguns, knives, things I couldn't name. A safe stood partially open in the wall beside it. Papers spilled from inside, and one caught my eye. My name, Elara Kostova, not my full name, just my first. A coincidence? I reached for it. I wouldn't. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat. I hadn't heard him enter. He stood in the doorway, still as a predator before the strike. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that couldn't quite disguise the danger beneath. Dark hair swept back from a face that might have been handsome if not for the scar that cut across his left cheekbone and the absolute coldness in his gray eyes. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice steadier than I felt. "Why am I here?" He studied me for a long moment, gaze traveling from my tangled hair to my bare legs with clinical detachment. "My shirt suits you," he said finally, voice deep and accented. Russian, but with something else beneath it. "Though I preferred the blue dress you were wearing last night." My stomach twisted. "What happened last night?" The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "Don't ask what happened last night," he, said. "It's better if you don't remember." Fear and fury tangled in my chest. I glanced at the door behind him, calculating odds I already knew were impossible. "You wouldn't make it to the elevator," he said, reading my thoughts. "And if you did, my men would stop you before you reached the lobby. And if somehow you managed that impossible feat," he stepped closer, and I forced myself not to retreat, "Orlov's men would put a bullet in your head before you made it half a block." "Orlov?" The name sparked no recognition. "The man who wants you dead." He moved to the bar cart, pouring amber liquid into a crystal glass. "The man whose men I killed last night to keep you breathing." I swallowed hard. "I'm an art restorer. I don't know anyone who would want me dead." His laugh was soft and without humor. "You're more than that, Elara, far more. But for now," he handed me the glass, "you're under my protection." "Protection?" I didn't take the glass. "This looks like captivity. Call it what you want. You leave, you die." He set the glass down. "I am Tavian Markov. This is my home. You will stay here until I determine it's safe for you to leave." "And when will that be?" His expression didn't change. "When Orlov is dead." She woke with violence in her eyes. It was the first thing I noticed, how her hand curled around the edge of the sheet, knuckles white, ready to use it as a weapon. Good instinct. Pointless, but good. I watched her from the doorway, cataloging her injuries with cold precision: bruised ribs, possibly fractured, contusion at her temple where she'd hit the ground when I tackled her away from Orlov's man. Split lip, now swollen. Each mark fueled a rage I kept carefully leashed. 3 of Orlov's men were dead because they'd touched her. I'd have killed 300. I wouldn't, I said when she reached for the documents. Not yet. She wasn't ready for the truth. She spun toward me, startled but defiant. Blue eyes, wide but sharp with intelligence. Hair like midnight, tangled from sleep. My shirt hanging off one shoulder, exposing the delicate curve where neck meets collarbone. Vulnerable points. I noted them automatically, the way I'd been taught since childhood. Throat, temple, the soft underside of the jaw. But she wasn't a target. She was the last Kostova, though she didn't know it. The lost daughter of the family Orlov had slaughtered 15 years ago. The rightful heir to territories my family had managed since the Purge, the perfect lever to use against Orlov. And I'd been watching her for weeks, learning her routines, the museum, her small apartment in the university district, the cafe where she sketched on Sunday mornings, always alone, always unaware of her value. Until last night, when Orlov's men had finally traced her lineage. I'd known they were closing in. I'd planned to approach her myself, controlled, strategic. Instead, I'd killed 3 men in an alley behind the Hermitage while she lay unconscious at my feet. Now she stood before me, demanding answers I couldn't give her. Not yet. Not until I was certain of who in my organization could be trusted with her existence. Don't ask what happened last night. It's better if you don't remember. The fear beneath her anger was evident in the rapid pulse at her throat. She glanced at the door, calculating. I almost admired her courage, almost pitied her ignorance. You wouldn't make it to the elevator. I explained her reality in simple terms. Orlov. Death. Protection. I watched comprehension dawn in her eyes, followed by that defiance again. My shirt suited her in more ways than one. Both highlighted her unexpected strength. You're under my protection, I told her. Protection? This looks like captivity. She wasn't wrong. I wouldn't insult her intelligence by pretending otherwise. Call it what you want. You leave, you die. A simple equation. Her life for her freedom. A fair trade in my world. I studied her as I introduced myself. Recognition flickered in her eyes. The Markov name carried weight even in civilian circles. Banking, real estate, security, the legitimate faces of an empire built on blood and silence. And when will that be? She asked. When Orlov is dead. The words hung between us. A promise, a sentence. I would kill Christoph Orlov regardless. Family debt demanded it. But now I had something he wanted, something worth drawing him into the open. I just needed to keep her alive long enough to use her. And if part of me recognized she deserved better than being reduced to a chess piece, well, that part would be silenced. Sentiment was weakness. And Tavian Markov was not weak. 3 days in a gilded cage was enough. I'd memorized the guard rotations, the security camera blind spots, the service entrance that seemed less heavily monitored than the main elevator. When Tavian left for what his security chief called a routine inspection, I made my move. I'd been given clothes, expensive, perfectly fitted, another reminder of how much thought had gone into my captivity. I changed into the darkest items, black slacks and a navy blouse, practical if I made it to the street. The service elevator required a key card. I'd watched a cleaning woman use hers yesterday, noted where she'd stored it in her cart. A simple distraction, a glass knocked over, water spreading toward electrical outlets, and the card was mine. My heart hammered as I slipped down the narrow corridor. No cameras here, just a long stretch to the service elevator. Freedom whispered just steps away. The key card worked, the elevator doors sliding open with a soft chime. I stepped inside, exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Then a hand caught the closing door. Razin, Tavian's security chief, stood blocking my escape. His expression didn't change as he observed me. No anger, no surprise, just calm assessment. Ms. Kostova, he said, as if we'd met in a hallway under normal circumstances. Mr. Markov would prefer you remain upstairs. I didn't fight when he escorted me back. What was the point? But my cooperation didn't earn leniency. Within hours, the penthouse had been stripped of electronics, the cleaning service suspended. The windows, I discovered, were bulletproof and unopenable. But then came the contradictions. Books appeared, art history volumes, restoration techniques, exactly the subjects that consumed my professional life. Fresh flowers, a sketch pad and charcoals, small comforts that suggested I wasn't just a prisoner, but a guest, a valuable one. That night, voices carried from Tavian's office. I pressed against the door, straining to hear. "The Kostova heir changes everything," a man said, voice raspy with age. "Orlov will burn the city down to find her." "Let him try," Tavian responded, cold and certain. "And after, when Orlov is dealt with, the territories have been Markov-controlled since the Purge. My father is not part of this discussion." A pause. "The girl could legitimize our claim. A marriage would—" "Enough." Tavian's voice cut like a blade. "She is not to be discussed in those terms. Is that understood?" I backed away from the door, pulse racing. Kostova heir. Territories. Marriage. None of it made sense, yet all of it centered on me. On a name, my name, that suddenly felt both foreign and strangely familiar. The next day, while Tavian was occupied with a video call, I tried again. I made it further this time, down the service elevator, through the kitchen, into the lobby. I was steps from the front door when a hand closed around my arm. "I admire your persistence," Tavian said quietly, his grip firm but not painful. "But your timing needs work." He guided me back toward the private elevator, his body close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from him. I hated the involuntary response of my body, the quickened breath, the heightened awareness. Stockholm Syndrome, I told myself, nothing more. "Why am I really here?" I demanded once we were alone in the elevator. "I heard you last night. Kostova heir, territories. What does any of that have to do with me?" His eyes met mine, something shifting in their gray depths. "You're not ready for those answers." "That's not your decision to make." The elevator stopped. He turned to me fully, one hand braced against the wall beside my head, not touching, but surrounding me with his presence. "Every decision regarding your safety is mine to make," he said, voice low. "Until you understand the world you're in, you follow my lead. It's the only way you survive." I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt a different kind of heat rising. Anger, I told myself, just anger. "I'm not one of your men to command." Something dangerous flickered across his face. "No," he agreed, "you're something far more valuable." Back in the penthouse, he surprised me by asking about my work. Specific questions about pigment restoration, aging techniques, authentication methods. Not the idle curiosity of a collector, but the focused interest of someone who understood the subject. "How do you know so much about art restoration?" I asked finally. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I make it my business to understand valuable things." That night, exploring the library, I found a hidden room. Inside, artifacts carefully preserved behind glass, a silver cigarette case bearing a crest I didn't recognize but somehow felt I should. A child's music box, delicate and antique, a half-burned painting, the remnants showing a family, father, mother, child, their faces damaged beyond recognition. Something about the painting called to me, a memory trying to surface through murky waters. I reached toward it. "You shouldn't be in here." Tavian stood in the doorway, expression unreadable, but something in his stance suggested not anger, but concern. "What is this place?" I asked. "Why do these things feel familiar?" He didn't answer, just gently guided me out, his hand at the small of my back. The touch shouldn't have felt like a brand against my skin, but it did. Everything about him was a contradiction, captor and protector, cold and burning, danger and safety. That night, the nightmares came. Fire, screaming, a child running through dark corridors. I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat, and he was there, sitting in the chair by my bed, watching me with those impossible gray eyes. "You were screaming," he said simply. "I was remembering," I whispered, though I didn't know what. For a moment, something like tenderness crossed his face. Then the mask returned, and he stood. "Sleep. You're safe here." As he reached the door, I found myself asking, "Are you the reason I'm safe, Tavian? Or the reason I'm in danger?" He paused, hand on the doorframe. "Both?" he said without turning. "Always both." She ran, as I knew she would, as I would have done. The service entrance was predictable, but her method wasn't. Creating a distraction for the cleaning staff showed resourcefulness. Using their key card showed patience. I made note of both qualities. I had Razin intercept her. Better him than me. My reaction to her defiance was becoming problematic, unpredictable. I didn't trust myself not to reveal too much too soon. When he returned her to the penthouse, I gave orders to remove anything that might aid another escape. Then, against better judgment, I had books delivered, subjects that would engage her mind, keep her from focusing solely on escape. I told myself it was strategic. A distracted prisoner was a manageable one. I didn't examine why her comfort concerned me at all. That evening, my brigadiers gathered in my office. Old Leonov, who had served my father, Vazhin, who controlled the docks, Kamenev, whose network extended into every government office, and Lazarev, ambitious, dangerous, whose loyalty extended exactly as far as his profit. The Kostova heir changes everything, Leonov said, cutting to the heart of the matter. His eyes, roomy but sharp, assessed me carefully. Orlov will burn the city down to find her. Let him try. I kept my voice level. Let them see only confidence, not the contingency plans already in motion. And after? When Orlov is dealt with, Leonov pressed. The territories have been Markov-controlled since the purge. Your father. My father is not part of this discussion. The old wounds threaten to reopen. My father, who ordered the Kostova family eliminated. Who sent me, 17 and eager to prove myself, to verify the bodies. Who never knew I'd found the child hiding in the ventilation shaft and chosen mercy over duty. The girl could legitimize our claim, Lazarev suggested, eyes gleaming with calculation. A marriage would... Enough! I cut him off, sudden fury rising at the suggestion. She was not a commodity to be bartered. The strength of my reaction disturbed me. This wasn't the calculated protection of a valuable asset. This was something else, something dangerous. She is not to be discussed in those terms. Is that understood? Lazarev's smile didn't reach his eyes, but he nodded. I made note to watch him more closely. His ambition made him unpredictable. After the meeting, I reviewed the building's security footage, a habit, a precaution, and there she was, slipping through the kitchen, determination in every line of her body. This time, I intercepted her myself. I admire your persistence, I told her, my hand closing around her arm. Beneath my fingers, her pulse raced like a frightened animal's. But your timing needs work. In the elevator, confined together, her scent surrounded me. Soap, the faint trace of the perfume I'd had delivered with her clothes, something uniquely her beneath it all. I kept my gaze forward, my expression neutral, though every instinct urged me to turn to her, to know. She was an asset, a responsibility, nothing more. Why am I really here? She demanded. I heard you last night. Kostova heir, territories. What does any of that have to do with me? I met her eyes, seeing the intelligence there, the determination. She deserved the truth, but the truth would put her in greater danger. Until I knew which of my men could be trusted, which were reporting to Orlov, partial truths were safer. You're not ready for those answers. Her frustration blazed, beautiful and fierce. That's not your decision to make. The elevator stopped. I turned to her fully, crowding her against the wall without touching her. A test of her courage, of my control. Every decision regarding your safety is mine to make, I said, voice low. Until you understand the world you're in, you follow my lead. It's the only way you survive. I expected fear. Instead, her eyes darkened, pupils dilating. Her breath came faster, lips parting slightly. Not just fear, something else, something that mirrored the heat building in my own blood. I'm not one of your men to command. No, she was something far more. Dangerous, something that made me question priorities I'd held for 15 years. Later, I asked about her work. Partly strategy, keep her mind engaged, learn her passions, build rapport. Partly genuine curiosity. I'd researched her accomplishments thoroughly. At 26, she was already respected in restoration circles, her techniques innovative, her eye exceptional. I wondered what she might have become if her birth family had lived, what she might still become if I could keep her alive. How do you know so much about art restoration? She asked, suspicion warring with interest in her expression. I make it my business to understand valuable things. I didn't say, I've been studying you for weeks. I've read every paper you've published. I know how your colleagues respect your precision, your patience, your integrity. That night, I found her in the sealed room, the archive of Kostova artifacts I'd collected over years. Insurance, I'd told myself. Proof of my loyalty to a family I'd failed to save. Now I wondered if it had been something else. Penance, respect, a connection to the child I'd smuggled away in the night, never expecting to see again. She stood before the burned family portrait, transfixed. Something in her posture, recognition fighting to surface through deliberately implanted amnesia, made my chest tighten. "You shouldn't be in here," I said softly. She turned, not startled, but questioning. "What is this place? Why do these things feel familiar?" I couldn't answer yet. Instead, I guided her out, my hand at the small of her back. The contact was unnecessary, unprofessional. I did it anyway, feeling her warmth through the thin fabric of her blouse, cataloging yet another weakness developing in my carefully constructed armor. Later, her screams woke me from a light sleep. I was at her door before conscious thought, weapon drawn, ready to eliminate any threat. But the only threat was in her mind. Nightmares, memories trying to surface. I sat watching her sleep after she calmed, telling myself it was necessary monitoring of a valuable asset. The lie was becoming harder to maintain, even to myself. "Are you the reason I'm safe, Tavian?" she asked as I left. "Or the reason I'm in danger?" The question cut to the bone, to the truth I'd been avoiding since I brought her to my home instead of a secured facility. Since I watched her sleep that first night, not with the detachment of a strategist, but with something far more complex. Both, I admitted. Always both. Because I was a Markov. The son of the man who helped orchestrate her family's destruction, the boy who defied orders to save her, the man who now used her as bait while telling himself it was protection. And despite everything I'd built, everything I'd become, I was starting to fear that this woman, this unexpected variable in my carefully planned vengeance, might be the one thing capable of destroying me. A week into my captivity, I found it. The hidden compartment, slid open when I pressed against a particular section of wood paneling in the library. Inside, a folder, worn, weathered, filled with newspaper clippings yellowed with age. The headline of the topmost one struck like a physical blow. Kostova Massacre Shocks Business World. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. A family photo accompanied the article, a stern-faced man with kind eyes, a beautiful woman with her chin held high, and between them, a small girl of perhaps 5. Dark hair, blue eyes, my face. The article detailed the slaughter of Viktor Kostova, his wife Irena, and their young daughter Elara, presumed dead though her body was never officially identified. 15 years ago. A tragic example of the dangers of opposing Bratva interests. My knees gave out. I sank to the floor, newspaper clippings scattered around me like fallen leaves. The truth roared through my mind, shattering everything I thought I knew. I wasn't Elara Nazari, adopted daughter of professors. I was Elara Kostova, sole survivor of a family erased from existence. Memories flickered, fragments I'd always dismissed as dreams, the smell of smoke, a hand over my mouth, a boy's face, teenage, scarred even then, whispering, "Don't make a sound." Tavian. Rage and confusion propelled me to my feet. I gathered the clippings, storming toward his office where I could hear him on a call. I didn't knock. I flung open the door, threw the papers onto his desk. "Explain this," I demanded, voice shaking. "Explain how I'm supposedly dead." He ended his call without a word, eyes flicking to the scattered clippings. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Resignation, perhaps. "You're earlier than I expected," he said quietly. "I thought it would take you at least another day to find that room. Tell me the truth. All of it." He gestured to the chair across from him. When I remained standing, he sighed. "The Kostova family controlled the northern territories, shipping, exports, certain government contracts. Your father was progressive, wanted to legitimize, move away from traditional Bratva activities." His eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. "Orlov couldn't allow that. Neither could others who profited from the old ways." "My parents," I whispered. "They weren't my parents." "The Nazaris protected you. They were friends of your mother's from university days. We arranged your new identity, your relocation to a different city. We. The word felt like acid. My father and his associates, the Markovs, were allies of the Kostovas. When the purge happened— The purge? You mean the murder of my family? Tears burned, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. He nodded once, accepting the correction. After your family was killed, my father took control of the territories. Temporary stewardship, he called it. Something flickered in his eyes. Bitterness, perhaps. You were the last Kostova, the rightful heir. But a child couldn't hold power, and revealing your survival would have meant your death. A sickening thought struck me. Did you know? When you found me at the museum, did you know who I was? He didn't look away. I've always known. The betrayal cut deep. Every conversation, every interaction, all manipulation. You've been watching me, haven't you? Using me? Protecting you, he corrected, when Orlov discovered your survival. The first bullet shattered the window behind him. Tavian moved with inhuman speed, tackling me to the floor as glass exploded inward. His body covered mine as more shots rang out. Alarms blared, the security system registering the breach. Stay down, he ordered, already moving, weapon drawn from a holster I hadn't noticed beneath his jacket. He fired 3 precise shots through the broken window, then dragged me toward a wall panel that slid open at his touch. Panic room, he explained, pushing me inside. Stay here, I grabbed his arm. Where are you going? His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something like fear in them, not for himself, for me. To make sure they don't reach you. He pressed a gun into my hand. Last resort. Point and shoot. Don't hesitate. The panel slid closed before I could protest. Inside, monitors showed security feeds throughout the building. Men in black tactical gear swarmed the lower floors. Tavian security forces engaged them in the stairwells, in the corridors, precise violence erupting in flashes of gunfire. And there was Tavian, moving with lethal grace, coordinating his men, eliminating threats with cold efficiency. I watched him take a bullet that grazed his side, barely flinching as he continued fighting, continued pushing toward the private elevator, protecting the path to me. One feed showed attackers approaching the hidden panel to the panic room. 3 men, heavily armed. They had the override code. Someone had betrayed Tavian. I clutched the gun, heart hammering. The panel would open in seconds. I couldn't stay. There was another exit, a narrow corridor that presumably led to some escape route. I took it, moving as quietly as possible through the dimly lit passage. It ended at a service elevator, requiring a code I didn't have. But beside it, a utility ladder descended into darkness. I climbed down, the metal cold against my palms, gun awkwardly tucked into my waistband. At the bottom, another corridor, then a door that opened into the building's underground parking garage. I'd almost reached a stairwell when hands seized me from behind. I twisted, fighting, a scream rising in my throat. It's me, Tavian hissed, turning me to face him. Blood streaked his shirt, his expression fierce. We need to move, now. More gunshots echoed from above. He pulled me toward a nondescript sedan, practically throwing me into the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel. Your side, I said as he started the engine. You're bleeding. It's nothing. He navigated through the garage, avoiding the main exit, instead approaching what appeared to be a solid wall. At his approach, it slid aside, revealing a narrow alleyway. Service tunnel. Leads to the maintenance roads. We emerged into the rainy night, the city's lights smeared across wet pavement. Tavian drove with one hand, the other pressing against his wounded side. His breathing was controlled, but I could see the pain and the tightness around his eyes. Orlov? I asked. Yes, but the attack was too coordinated. They knew exactly when to strike, which security protocols to override. His jaw tightened. Someone inside my organization is working with him. I stared at his profile, this dangerous man who had upended my existence, who had just killed to protect me, who had always known who I truly was. Where are we going? Secondary safe house, outside the city. His eyes flicked to me briefly. No one knows about it except Solenne. Solenne. My sister. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She's going to be very interested in meeting you. I fell silent, watching the city recede in the side mirror, trying to reconcile the fragments of my shattered identity. Elara Nazari was gone. Elara Kostova, whoever she was, remained, and despite everything, I was alive. Thanks to the man beside me, whose blood dripped silently onto the leather seat as he drove us into the unknown. I knew she'd find the archives eventually. I'd left them accessible, a calculated risk. She deserved the truth, even if I couldn't bring myself to deliver it directly. Cowardice, perhaps, or strategy. The line between them had blurred since she entered my life. When she burst into my office, eyes blazing with betrayal, I felt an unwelcome twist of admiration. Even shattered by revelation, she remained unbroken. Spine straight, chin high, the posture of her mother, though she wouldn't remember that. Tell me the truth, all of it. I gave her what I could, the sanitized version, the Kostova empire, the power struggle, the alliance between families. I didn't tell her that my father had sanctioned the massacre, hoping to absorb the Kostova territories. I didn't tell her that I'd been sent to verify the kills, a final test of my loyalty. I didn't tell her I'd found her, hidden in an air duct, terrified and silent, and made a choice that night that had defined every action since. I didn't tell her that I'd spent 15 years protecting her from afar, using my growing influence to keep her hidden, safe, separate from the blood and brutality of my world, until Orlov had somehow tracked her anyway. Did you know? When you found me at the museum, did you know who I was? I've always known. The admission fell between us like a blade. Her expression crumpled, and something in my chest twisted painfully. I had prepared for her hatred, her fear. I hadn't prepared for her hurt. The window exploded before I could explain further. Instinct took over. I threw myself at her, shielding her with my body as glass rained around us. Tactical assault. Orlov's men, too many for a standard hit. This was an extraction team. They'd come for her. I moved automatically, returning fire, calculating angles, assessing weaknesses in their approach. But beneath the cold calculation, rage burned. They dared come into my home. They dared threaten what was mine. The panic room would hold her temporarily. I pressed my Makarov into her hand, noting her steady grip. Another surprise, another strength I hadn't anticipated. Last resort. Point and shoot, don't hesitate. I sealed her inside, already knowing the real battle lay ahead. Through my earpiece, reports flooded in. Multiple entry points breached, casualties mounting on both sides. A coordinated strike impossible without internal intelligence. I had a traitor close to me. I'd find them, later, after she was safe. I moved through the corridors with methodical precision, eliminating threats, coordinating defensive positions. A bullet grazed my side. Careless, distracted by concern for her, I ignored the pain, pushing toward the elevator banks. If they cut power, the panic room's secondary exit was the only way out. My security feed showed 3 men approaching the panic room's hidden entrance, men with codes they shouldn't have. Then, Elara watching them approach before disappearing down the emergency exit. Good girl, smart, but now unprotected. I changed direction, calculating her likely path. The service ladder would take her to the garage level. If she made it that far, if she found an exit before Orlov's men found her. I reached the garage level in time to see her small figure darting between vehicles. Relief was unfamiliar, uncomfortable. I pushed it aside, moving silently until I could secure her. She fought when I grabbed her, another unexpected strength. No freezing, no surrender, pure survival instinct. It's me, I told her, turning her to face me. Her eyes were wild but focused, no panic, just determination. We need to move, now. In the car, I felt her gaze on my bleeding side. The wound was superficial, but the blood loss significant enough to be inconvenient. I'd dealt with worse, much worse. Your side, she said, you're bleeding. Her concern was unexpected, misplaced. I dismissed it. It's nothing. I drove through the maintenance tunnel, mind already mapping our next steps. The safe house, my personal property, held under a shell corporation even my accountants didn't know I controlled. Supplies there would be basic but sufficient. Medical equipment, weapons, enough to regroup to plan our next move. Orlov? She asked, voice steadier than it had any right to be. Yes, but the attack was too coordinated. The betrayal stung more than the bullet had. I'd find the traitor. make an example of them. But first, her safety. Always her safety. Someone inside my organization is working with him. Where are we going? Secondary safe house, outside the city. I glanced at her, assessing. Shock should have set in by now. The revelations, the attack, the flight. Instead, she watched me with clear, calculating eyes. Survivor's eyes. No one knows about it except Solène. Solène? My sister. I almost smiled, imagining the meeting. Solène had argued for revealing the truth to Elara years ago, had called me a coward for keeping her ignorant, vulnerable through ignorance. Perhaps she'd been right. I drove in silence after that, monitoring my rearview mirror for tails, calculating blood loss against remaining travel time. The wound wasn't dangerous yet. It would hold until we reached safety. Beside me, Elara remained silent, processing, redefining herself. I'd taken her identity, her history, her choice. Now Orlov had taken her security, her freedom, forced her deeper into my world. Between us, I wasn't sure who had wronged her more, but I knew with bone-deep certainty that I would die before I let Orlov touch her. Not for strategy, not for vengeance, not for the ghost of a debt owed to her family, for her, just for her. The realization was unwelcome, dangerous, a weakness I couldn't afford. I pushed it aside, focusing on the road ahead, on escape routes and contingency plans, on the practical matters of keeping her alive. The other thoughts, the ones that had no place in the mind of Tavian Markov, I buried deep, where they couldn't distract me from what needed to be done. The safe house was nothing like I'd expected. No fortress, no compound ringed with guards, just a modest dacha nestled among birch trees, its wooden exterior weathered by Baltic storms. Inside, though, I glimpsed Tavian's hand, reinforced doors, bulletproof windows disguised as ordinary glass, surveillance equipment discreetly integrated into rustic decor. Bathrooms through there, he said, nodding toward a narrow hallway. First aid kit under the sink. He shrugged off his jacket, wincing slightly, then began unbuttoning his blood-soaked shirt. I should have turned away. Instead, I watched as he revealed the damage, a deep graze along his ribs, still bleeding steadily. That needs stitches, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. He glanced at me, something like amusement flickering in his eyes. I've had worse. That doesn't make it better now. I moved past him to the bathroom, finding the medical kit exactly where he'd said. When I returned, he was pouring vodka into 2 glasses. Drink, he ordered, pushing one toward me. I'm not the one bleeding. But I took it anyway, the burn of alcohol steadying my nerves as I set out suture materials. He raised an eyebrow. You know how to do this? Basic first aid was required for museum restoration work. Chemicals, sharp tools. I pulled on gloves. I've never actually stitched a person, but the principle should be similar to canvas repair. A sound escaped him, something almost like laughter, quickly suppressed. Comparing me to damaged art? Sit down before you fall down, I countered, gesturing to a chair. To my surprise, he complied, lowering himself with controlled movements that couldn't quite hide his pain. I cleaned the wound, the proximity to him disorienting, the heat of his skin, the controlled rhythm of his breathing, the map of old scars telling stories I couldn't yet read. This will hurt, I warned, needle poised. It already hurts. His eyes held mine. I trust your hands. Those words shouldn't have affected me. This man had lied to me, manipulated me, dragged me into a world of violence. Yet my pulse quickened as I began the first suture, careful and precise. He didn't flinch as the needle pierced skin, didn't react beyond a slight tightening around his eyes. I worked in silence, aware of his gaze on my face, of the strangeness of this moment, tending the wounds of a man who had both destroyed and saved my life. Why did you help me? I asked finally, tying off the last stitch. 15 years ago. Why save me at all? His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. You were a child, innocent. And now you're a complication. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. A necessary one. I sat back, suddenly aware of how close we'd been, how intimate the act of repairing his damaged flesh. Necessary for what? Revenge against Orlov? That was the original plan. He stood, testing the stitches with careful fingers. Use you to draw him out, end him, settle old debts. And now? He looked at me directly, all pretense gone. Now I'm not sure what the plan is, except keeping you alive. Over the next days, the isolation of the dacha created an odd domesticity. Tavian taught me rudimentary self-defense, how to break a hold, where to strike for maximum effect, how to use my smaller size as an advantage. His hands were impersonal, clinical, yet every touch left heat in its wake. At night, we played chess on an antique set, talking about art, history, literature, safe topics that revealed unexpected depths to him. He spoke 4 languages fluently, could discuss Renaissance techniques with surprising knowledge, quoted Pushkin from memory. "You're not what I expected," I admitted one evening after capturing his knight. "What did you expect? A mindless thug? Someone colder, less human?" His fingers paused on his remaining bishop. "Perhaps I'm not what I expected either." The nightmares returned that night, more vivid than before. Fire consuming everything, a man's shouts, a woman's screams, hands dragging me through dark corridors. I woke gasping, tears streaming down my face. Tavian appeared in my doorway, weapon drawn, eyes scanning for threats before settling on my face. Without speaking, he crossed to the bed, sitting carefully on its edge. "You remembered something," he said. Not a question. I nodded, drawing shaking breaths. "The fire, the screaming." I looked up at him. "Was it you? The boy who found me?" For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" His voice was soft, almost gentle. Would it have made my actions since any more forgivable? I couldn't answer. Instead, I found myself reaching for his hand in the darkness. His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Elara," he said. "I'm asking you to survive." In that moment, with his hand anchoring me against the storm of recovered memories, I wanted to offer something. Forgiveness, understanding, I wasn't sure what, but words failed me. So we sat in silence, connected by that single point of contact, until I drifted back to sleep. The next morning brought Selene, arriving in a sleek black car that seemed out of place against the rustic backdrop. She was everything Tavian wasn't. Warm, expressive, her smile quick and genuine as she embraced her brother. But her eyes, the same storm gray as his, assessed me with equal calculation. "So you're the infamous Elara," she said, taking my hands in hers. "I've waited a long time to meet you." Over tea, she spoke openly of things Tavian had carefully avoided, the political structure of the territories, the power vacuum left by my family's deaths, the current alliances and enmities. "You need to understand your world if you're going to survive in it," she explained when Tavian glared at her. "Keeping her ignorant has never been the protection you thought it was, brother." Later, exploring the perimeter of the property, I found Tavian's private office, a small room filled with surveillance equipment, maps, dossiers, and photos of Christoph Orlov meeting with various men, including one I recognized, Razin's aide, Mikhail. Tavian found me there, his expression darkening when he saw what I'd discovered. "Mikhail," I said, pointing to the photo, "he's the traitor." "Yes." He moved closer, eyes on the surveillance screens. "I've known for 2 days. Selene confirmed it." "You didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now." He met my gaze directly. "I don't tell you everything, Elara, but I'll never lie to you again." I believed him. Despite everything, despite the rational arguments against trust, I believed him. And that realization frightened me more than Orlov's men ever could. Because somewhere between hatred and understanding, between captivity and protection, I'd begun to feel something for Tavian Markov that I wouldn't name. She stitched my wound with hands steadier than any field medic I'd known, precise, careful, her touch clinical, yet somehow intimate. I watched her face as she worked, the furrow of concentration between her brows, the slight press of teeth against her lower lip. Details I had no business noticing, details I couldn't stop cataloging. "Why did you help me?" she asked, breaking the silence that had settled between us. 15 years ago, why save me at all? The question I'd always known would come, the moment that had defined everything after. "You were a child, innocent, a partial truth, the Rest, the way her small hand had clutched mine in the darkness, her absolute trust as I'd smuggled her from the burning house, the promise I'd whispered that she would be safe. Those things I kept to myself. And now? Now you're a complication. The words came easily, safer than admitting what she'd become. A necessary one. Necessary for what? Revenge against Orlov? I gave her the strategy, the cold calculation she expected. That was the original plan. Use you to draw him out. End him. Settle old debts. And now? The question hung between us. I could have lied, should have. Instead, I found myself answering with dangerous honesty. Now I'm not sure what the plan is, except keeping you alive. At the dacha, routine formed quickly. Security protocols, self-defense training, chess in the evenings. I taught her how to break a hold, where to strike to incapacitate, how to use a smaller opponent's momentum against them. I kept my touches impersonal, instructive, ignored the heat that lingered on my palms each time. In the quiet evenings, over chess, conversation flowed with unexpected ease. She spoke of art with passion that transformed her, eyes brightening, hands gesturing as she described pigment composition, brushstroke techniques, historical contexts. I found myself sharing more than I intended, poetry I'd memorized as a child, historical analyses from university studies I'd never completed, observations from travels I rarely discussed. "You're not what I expected," she said one night, her queen threatening my defense. "What did you expect? A mindless thug?" The question came with more edge than I had intended. Someone colder, less human. The assessment struck deeper than it should have. Perhaps I'm not what I expected either. That night her screams woke me from light sleep. I was at her door in seconds, weapon ready, before recognizing the nightmare for what it was. Memory, returning in fragments. She looked at me with tear-streaked face, and something broke open inside me. A protective instinct too raw to be strategic, too profound to be denied. I sat beside her, keeping careful distance until she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Was it you? The boy who found me?" "Yes." The confession felt like surrendering a weapon. "Why didn't you tell me?" A question with no satisfactory answer. Would the truth have changed anything? Made her trust me sooner? Made her hate me less? I doubted it. Would it have changed anything? Would it have made my actions since any more forgivable? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for my hand in the darkness, a gesture so unexpected that I froze before allowing my fingers to close around hers. Her skin was cool, soft. Artist's hands, not made for the world I'd dragged her into. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Elara," I told her softly. "I'm asking you to survive." She fell asleep holding my hand, a trust so profound it left me shaken. I stayed until her breathing deepened, steady and peaceful, before carefully extracting myself. Sleep eluded me after that. Solène arrived the next morning, bringing supplies and information. My sister, the only person in my life who had ever seen through my carefully constructed facade. She embraced me with genuine warmth, then turned that same warmth on Elara, who looked startled by the gesture. "So you're the infamous Elara. I've waited a long time to meet you." Over tea, Solène spoke too freely of things I'd carefully avoided: territorial politics, power structures, the complications of Elara's reappearance. I glared at her, but she ignored me with practiced ease. "You need to understand your world if you're going to survive in it," she told Elara, directing the words at me. "Keeping her ignorant has never been the protection you thought it was, brother." Later, when Elara had gone to explore the grounds, Solène confronted me directly. "You're looking at her the way father looked at mother," she said quietly, "and we both know how that ended." I stiffened. "It's not like that." "No," her smile was knowing. "Then why bring her here, to your personal sanctuary? Why not one of the operational safe houses? Why keep her so close when it would be safer to separate?" I had no answer that wouldn't reveal too much. Selena's expression softened. "Be careful, Tavian. The Kostova girl is not just an asset. She's becoming your weakness, and in our world. We cannot afford weakness," I finished. "I know." After she left, I retreated to my surveillance room, reviewing intelligence reports, mapping Orlov's movements, planning our next steps. The discovery that Mikhail was the traitor had been confirmed through Solene's contacts. He would be dealt with, but not yet, not until I could use him to feed misinformation to Orlov. I sensed Elara's presence before I heard her, some new awareness that prickled along my spine whenever she was near. "Mikhail," she said, pointing to the surveillance photos, "he's the traitor." "Yes, I've known for 2 days," Solene confirmed it. "You didn't tell me." I turned to face her fully, struck again by the quiet strength in her stance, the intelligence in her gaze. She deserved truth, as much as I could give. "I'm telling you now." I held her gaze, letting her see more than I'd allowed before. "I don't tell you everything, Elara, but I'll never lie to you again." Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a trust I hadn't earned and didn't deserve. It made me want to reach for her, to cross the careful distance I'd maintained, to discover if her lips would feel as soft as they looked, if her body would fit against mine the way I'd imagined in unguarded moments. Instead, I turned back to the surveillance monitors, control, distance, strategy, the things I understood, the only things that would keep her alive. But the truth remained, unspoken, but undeniable. Solene was right. Elara Kostova had become my weakness, and in my world, weaknesses got you killed. Act 5. The Betrayal. Days passed in the dacha, an uneasy peace settling between us. Tavian spent hours on secure calls, planning, strategizing, the weight of his empire visible in the tension of his shoulders. I learned to recognize his moods, the subtle shifts in his expression that signaled danger or rare moments of calm. We'd developed a routine, training in the mornings, chess in the evenings, moments of unexpected connection bridging the space between captive and captor, victim and savior. Until the morning, Tavian announced we had to move. "Orlov is planning something," he said, eyes on the surveillance feeds. "Intelligence suggests he's meeting someone tomorrow night. Someone important." "Who?" "We don't know yet." He glanced at me. "But I intend to be there, to end this." Fear twisted in my stomach. "You're going to confront him." "I'm going to kill him," he corrected, voice coldly matter-of-fact. "And you'll remain here with additional security." Anger flared, hot and sudden. "You expect me to hide while you face the man who murdered my family?" "Yes." His expression hardened. "This isn't your fight." "Isn't my fight?" I laughed, the sound brittle. "He killed my parents. He's hunted me for 15 years. If anyone has the right to face him, it's me." "Rights don't matter, survival does." He moved closer, eyes intense. "If you're there, I'll be distracted. Concerned for your safety. It puts us both at risk. Or I could help. A distraction, something he wouldn't expect." "No." The word fell like a blade. "I won't risk you." I turned away, chest tight with fury and something else. Fear for him, though I'd never admit it. "It's not your decision to make." "It is." His hand caught my arm, gentle but firm. "Until this is over, your safety is my only priority. Please, Elara." That "please," so unexpected from him, nearly undid me. I pulled free, retreating to my room where I paced like a caged animal, the walls closing in. He wanted to protect me, but he was also controlling me, making decisions about my life, my vengeance, without consulting me, just as he'd done 15 years ago. Later, Solene found me in the garden, her expression sympathetic. "He's being stubborn," she said, sitting beside me on the stone bench. "He thinks he's protecting you." "By denying me the right to face my family's killer?" She sighed. "My brother has spent 15 years planning Orlov's destruction. It's become his obsession, his purpose." Her eyes, so like Tavian's, held mine. "Until you. Now he's torn between vengeance and protecting you." "I don't need protection, I need truth." Solene was quiet for a moment. Then, "Would you like to see?" "Not confront Orlov, just observe the meeting. From a distance, safely." Hope sparked. "Tavian would never allow it." Her smile was sly. "Tavian doesn't need to know, not until it's done." I should have refused, should have recognized the risk, but the chance to see Orlov, to witness whatever Tavian had planned, it was irresistible. "When do we leave?" The warehouse district sprawled along the waterfront, abandoned buildings looming like sentinels against the night sky. Selene drove with focused precision, explaining the plan as we approached. The meeting is in the old shipping office. There's an adjacent building with sightlines to the main floor. We'll observe from there. What about Tavian? Won't he see us? He'll be focused on Orlov. She parked in a shadowed alley. Besides, he's approaching from the riverside. We're coming in from the rear access. We moved through the darkness, Selene leading with quiet confidence. The adjacent building was cold, damp with sea air and neglect. We climbed metal stairs that creaked beneath our weight, emerging onto a catwalk with a clear view into the main warehouse through dirt-streaked windows. Below, figures moved in the shadows, Tavian's men taking positions. And in the center, Tavian himself, a dark silhouette against pale concrete, waiting. The door at the far end opened. Men entered, weapons visible, flanking an older figure who moved with aristocratic grace despite his age. Christoph Orlov. I recognized him from the surveillance photos, but seeing him in person sent ice through my veins. This was the man who had ordered my family's execution, who had hunted me all these years. The sharp click of a gun being cocked froze me in place. "Stay very still," a man's voice ordered from behind us. "Hands where I can see them." Selene stiffened beside me, slowly raising her hands. I followed suit, heart hammering against my ribs. More men emerged from the shadows surrounding us. I glanced at Selene, saw the calculation in her eyes, and something else. Not surprise, expectation. "You knew," I whispered, realization dawning. This was a trap. Her expression flickered with what might have been regret. "Not for you. For Tavian. I'm sorry, Elara." The men separated us, two of them gripping my arms as they marched me down the stairs and through a service corridor. Terror and betrayal warred in my chest. Selene had led me into this, Tavian's own sister. Why? They brought me to a small office where Orlov waited, seated behind a desk as if this crumbling warehouse were his corporate headquarters. Up close, he was older than I'd expected, his face mapped with lines of cruelty and power. Silver hair swept back, eyes sharp as winter ice. "Elara Kostova," he said, voice cultured, almost gentle. "My dear niece, how you've grown." The word struck like lightning. "Niece? Didn't they tell you?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Victor was my half-brother, the same father, different mothers. I'm your uncle, my dear." I shook my head, disbelieving. "You ordered the execution of your own brother, his family?" "A regrettable necessity." He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss. I have nothing to say to you, but I have much to tell you, about your family, about the Markovs." His expression hardened. About the young man who has been using you as a pawn in his game." "Tavian saved my life." "Did he?" Orlov opened a folder on the desk, pushing it toward me. "Or did he preserve his father's investment, the last Kostova, kept alive as insurance, as leverage, a figurehead to legitimize the Markov claim on your family's territories?" My hands trembled as I looked at the documents, bank transfers, dates, names, the Markov patriarch's signature on orders that coincided with the date of the massacre. "Tavian's father ordered the hit," Orlov continued. "I merely carried out his wishes, as the loyal ally I was then. But he insisted one child be spared. Insurance, he called it. The boy Tavian was sent to retrieve you, to ensure your cooperation." "You're lying." But doubt crept in, cold and insidious. "Am I?" He pushed another document forward. "The Markovs expanded their territory the day after your family died. They've profited immensely from your absence, and now that I've become inconvenient, Tavian uses you again, bait to draw me out, a weapon aimed at my heart." I felt sick, the room spinning around me. Could it be true? Had Tavian known all along, been complicit in his father's plans? "Come with me, Elara," Orlov said, his voice softening. "Let me show you the truth about your family. The full truth, not the sanitized version Markov has fed you." I thought of Tavian, his careful omissions, the secrets he'd kept, the way he controlled my movements, my choices, the missing pieces in his story that I'd been too willing to overlook. "If I go with you," I said slowly, "I want guarantees. No harm comes to me." "You have my word." He stood, offering his hand. "Family doesn't harm family." The bitter irony of those words from the man who'd orchestrated my family's slaughter wasn't lost on me. But in that moment, trapped between uncertain loyalties, I made my choice. I took his hand. The intelligence was solid. Orlov would meet his new German suppliers at the warehouse complex tonight. 3 entry points, 2 exit strategies, a clear shot if everything aligned. I'd planned for this moment for 15 years, the death of Christoph Orlov, the man who had executed my family's massacre on my father's orders, the man who had continued hunting Elara even after my father's death. I left her at the dacha, ignoring the fury in her eyes when I denied her participation. Her anger was easier to bear than her loss would be. "I'm going to kill him," I'd told her plainly, the truth unvarnished. "And you'll remain here, with additional security." Her response had been predictable, justified even, but I couldn't risk her presence, couldn't divide my focus when facing Orlov. "Hey, I won't risk you," I'd said. Something dangerously close to pleading had entered my voice. "Please, Elara," she'd retreated, wounded pride and righteous anger in every line of her body. I'd let her go, knowing the distance was necessary. Her safety mattered more than her approval. Now, as my men took positions throughout the warehouse complex, I focused on the task at hand. Orlov would arrive with his usual security detail, 8 men, heavily armed. My team was prepared, Razin leading the river approach, Kamenev's men on the roof, snipers in position on adjacent buildings. The comm unit in my ear crackled. "Target approaching, 6 minutes out." I checked my weapon one final time, then moved to the center of the warehouse floor. No cover, no concealment, a deliberate choice. Let Orlov see me, focus on me. Let his attention fix on the visible threat while my men closed in from all sides. Footsteps approached. The main door swung open, revealing Orlov flanked by his guards. He looked older than in the surveillance photos, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, cruelly amused. The eyes that had watched my father sign the Kostova death warrant, the eyes that had searched for Elara for 15 years. "Markov," he greeted, as if this were a business meeting. "I was wondering when you'd make your move." "You've been waiting 15 years to find out." He smiled thinly. "Patience is a virtue, one your father never mastered." I kept my expression neutral, though rage simmered beneath. My father made many mistakes. Allying with you was chief among them. And yet here we are, still bound by old blood debts. He glanced around the warehouse. "Your men are well hidden, professional, but do you really think I came unprepared?" The comm unit in my ear hissed with sudden static. Then Razin's voice, urgent. "Sir, we have a situation. The sister, she's here, with the girl." Ice flooded my veins. Elara, here, with Solen? It made no sense. "You seem distracted, Markov," Orlov observed. "Perhaps you've just received some troubling news, about a certain young woman, perhaps?" Understanding struck like a physical blow. He knew, had known all along. "What have you done?" I demanded, hand tightening on my weapon. "Nothing yet." His smile widened. "But your sister has been most helpful. Did you know she's been informing me of your movements for months, ever since you refused to acknowledge her claim to leadership after your father's death?" Solen. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. My own sister, delivering Elara to Orlov out of, what? Revenge? Ambition? "If you harm her, the Kostova girl, why would I harm my own niece?" He chuckled at my expression. "Oh, you didn't know that part. Victor was my half-brother. The girl's my blood. More mine than yours by right." My finger tensed on the trigger, but Orlov's next words stopped me cold. "She's already chosen, Markov. Chosen to come with me, to learn the truth about her family, about your father's role in their deaths." "You're lying," but uncertainty gnawed. Had Elara gone willingly? Had she believed whatever poison Orlov had fed her? "Am I?" He gestured, and one of his men stepped forward with a phone, displaying a security feed. Elara, walking beside Orlov, her expression conflicted but determined. "She wants the truth, something you've never given her." I forced myself to breathe, to think past the rage and fear clouding my judgment. The operation was compromised. Elara was in Orlov's hands. Solen had betrayed us all. "Stand down," I ordered into my comm. "Withdraw to secondary positions." Orlov's smile was victorious. "Wise decision. The girl will remain under my protection while she learns her family's true history. If you attempt to interfere, she'll learn exactly how deep Markov treachery runs, including your personal role. My personal role. The words twisted like a knife. He was threatening to tell her everything, that my father had ordered her family's deaths, that I had been sent to verify the kills, that I had found her hiding, terrified, and made a choice that night that had defined everything since. "This isn't over," I told him, voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "It was over 15 years ago," he countered. "You just didn't know it." He backed away, his men maintaining defensive positions until he reached the door. Only when the sound of vehicles faded did I allow myself to move, rage and fear warring for dominance. I found Selene under guard in the adjacent building, her expression defiant despite the blood trickling from a cut on her cheek where one of my men had subdued her. "Why?" I demanded, voice raw with betrayal. "You were never going to let her take her rightful place," she spat. "Just like father, using the Kostova name while maintaining Markov control. She deserved to know the truth." "So you gave her to Orlov?" "I gave her a choice." She strained against her restraints. "Something you never did." I struck the wall beside her head, concrete cracking under the force of my fist. He'll kill her. Once he has what he wants, her signature transferring the territory's public renunciation of her claims, he'll eliminate her. You don't know that. I know exactly that. I stepped back, ice replacing fire in my veins, strategy reasserting itself past emotion. "And now I have to get her back before he does." I turned to Razin, who waited silently nearby. "Mobilize everyone. Every ally, every asset. I want Orlov's current location within the hour." "Sir?" He hesitated. "The families won't all agree to move against Orlov directly. It could start a war." "There won't be a war," I said coldly. "There won't be an Orlov family when I'm done." I looked back at Selene, seeing her clearly for the first time. The sister I'd protected, elevated, trusted beyond all others. "And when this is over, when Elara is safe, you and I will have a final conversation about loyalty." Fear flickered in her eyes, but her chin lifted defiantly. "You love her, the Kostova girl. That's why you're like this." I didn't deny it. Couldn't. The truth had been growing inside me like a wound, like a fire, consuming everything else. "Yes," I said simply, "and that's why Orlov is already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." Act 6. The Resolution. The Orlov estate sprawled across the headland, a fortress disguised as a mansion, Baroque architecture, manicured gardens, security disguised as ornamentation, beautiful and deadly like its owner. I stood at the window of my guest suite, watching guards patrol the grounds below, calculating distances, angles, possibilities. 3 days I'd been here. 3 days of gilded captivity while Christoph Orlov fed me selected truths about my family's history. I learned my father had indeed been progressive, pushing to legitimize family businesses, forge political connections, move away from traditional bratva activities. I learned Christoph had opposed this modernization, clinging to old methods, old powers. I learned the two brothers had been locked in a power struggle for years before the massacre. But something in Orlov's narrative rang false, the way he avoided certain questions, the way his eyes shifted when discussing the night of the fire. The excessive security that surrounded me, not protection, but containment. I wasn't a guest, I was a prisoner, just as I'd been with Tavian. But Tavian's captivity had evolved into something else. Protection, connection, a complex bond I couldn't name. Here, beneath Christoph's courtesy, I sensed only calculation and malice. My room was comfortable but surveilled, cameras in every corner, guards outside my door. They'd taken my phone, provided clothes, jewelry, everything but freedom. I explored my boundaries carefully, noting blind spots, routines, potential weaknesses in the security system. The art restorer in me found unexpected use, the tools of my trade translated to improvised weapons, lockpicks, distractions. I worked methodically, patiently, as I would on a damaged canvas, testing, probing, planning. On the 4th night, Christoph invited me to dinner in his private study. Crystal and silver gleamed on the antique table, wines worth more than my yearly salary breathing in cut-glass decanters. He watched me with those cold eyes, assessing, calculating. "Tomorrow," he said, swirling burgundy liquid in his glass, "we'll announce your return to the world, The last Kostova, home at last. And after the announcement, I asked, keeping my voice neutral, you'll sign documents returning control of the territories to their rightful overseer. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Family taking care of family. The territories were my father's. Shouldn't they be mine now? His expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into false concern. My dear, you've been away so long. You know nothing of our world, our business. You would be vulnerable, manipulated. I'm offering you protection. The same words Tavian had used, but from Christoph they sounded like a threat. And if I refuse? His smile remained fixed. Why would you refuse, unless Markov has poisoned you against your own blood? Tavian told me the truth, I said carefully, that you ordered my family's execution. Did he tell you his father authorized it, signed the order? That the Markovs profited most from Victor's death? He pushed a folder across the table. Did he tell you he was sent to verify the kills that night, that he found you and kept you secret, not to protect you, but to control you? I opened the folder. Documents, photographs, signatures, evidence of Markov involvement in the massacre. But something nagged at me, inconsistencies in dates, details that contradicted what I'd seen in Tavian's archives. These could be forged, I said. They could be. He leaned forward. But ask yourself, why would Markov hide you for 15 years instead of restoring your birthright? Why keep you ignorant, dependent? A true protector would have prepared you to reclaim your name, your power. The questions mirrored my own doubts, feeding the uncertainty that had driven me to leave with him. But beneath them, another question formed. Why was Orlov so eager to control me now? After dinner, back in my room, I made my final preparations. Using a sharpened metal nail file stolen from a decorative vanity set, I worked the lock on the French doors leading to the balcony. It took nearly an hour of careful manipulation before the mechanism finally gave way. The night air was cold against my skin as I slipped onto the balcony, assessing the 30-foot drop to the gardens below. Too far to jump. But the decorative stonework provided hand and footholds, a difficult climb, but possible. I had almost reached the ground when an alarm blared, searchlights flooding the gardens. I dropped the remaining distance, pain shooting through my ankle as I landed awkwardly, but adrenaline pushed me forward, darting between topiaries, keeping to shadows as guards shouted in the distance. The communications building, a small structure near the gatehouse, was my target. If I could reach it, send a message, alert Tavian. I made it inside, the door yielding to my improvised picks. The security console glowed with displays of the estate grounds, radio equipment humming quietly. I worked quickly, finding an emergency channel, broadcasting a simple message: Orlov Estate, Northeast Wing, Kostova. Whether Tavian would receive it, whether he still cared after my betrayal, these questions had no answers. I could only hope. Footsteps pounded outside. I ducked behind equipment racks as the door burst open, guards sweeping the room with flashlights and weapons. One moved in my direction, light inching closer to my hiding place. A crash from outside drew their attention. Something had breached the perimeter. The guards shouted into radios, coordinating a response to the new threat. I remained frozen, hardly daring to breathe as they rushed out. When I finally emerged, the estate had erupted into chaos. Gunfire echoed from multiple directions. Explosions flashed against the night sky. An assault was underway. Coordinated, professional, overwhelming. Tavian. I moved. The main house. Instinct driving me back to where Christoph would be. If this was the end, I wanted to face him, to know the full truth before it was too late. I found him in his study, watching security feeds with clinical detachment as his men fell. When he saw me in the doorway, his expression didn't change. "Clever girl," he said mildly. "You've doomed us both." "Tell me the truth," I demanded. "All of it. No more manipulations." He studied me for a moment, then gestured to a chair. I remained standing. "The truth?" His laugh held no humor. "The truth is that Victor was weak, soft, willing to surrender power for legitimacy." His eyes hardened. "The truth is that I arranged the hit. I convinced the elder Markov to authorize it, against his better judgment, I might add." "You killed your own brother?" "I eliminated a liability." He shrugged. Families are complicated, my dear. Surely you've learned that by now. And Tavian? Something flickered in his eyes. Hatred, perhaps. Tavian Markov was supposed to verify that all Kostovas were eliminated. Instead, he found you and defied his father, smuggled you to safety. His one act of rebellion in an otherwise dutiful life. Relief flooded through me. Tavian had saved me, not as part of some larger strategy, but as an act of conscience, of mercy. He spent 15 years gathering evidence against his father and against me, Orlov continued, building his empire, his power, all to reach this moment. Rather impressive, I must admit, though ultimately futile. The door behind me crashed open. Orlov's security chief entered, dragging a bloodied figure in a guard's uniform. Found him near the east perimeter, one of Markov's men. Kristoff's expression shifted. Bring him here. They forced the man to his knees. Through the blood and bruising, I recognized him, one of the security team from Tavian's building. Where is Markov? Kristoff demanded. The man remained silent. Kristoff nodded to his security chief, who struck the prisoner with brutal efficiency. This will continue until you speak, Kristoff said calmly. Where is your employer? Something inside me snapped. Without thinking, I grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the desk and swung it at the security chief's head. It connected with a sickening crack, the man dropping instantly. The prisoner seized the opportunity, lunging at Orlov despite his restraints. Chaos erupted as more guards rushed in. I fought with desperate intensity, using everything Tavian had taught me: leverage, momentum, precision. But there were too many. Hands seized me, dragging me back, a gun pressed to my temple. Enough! Kristoff roared, straightening his jacket as order restored. Take her to the ceremony room. Prepare for the broadcast. Broadcast? I struggled against the guards. What broadcast? His smile was terrible in its calm certainty. Your public execution, my dear. Blamed on Markov, of course, the tragic end of the Kostova line and the beginning of open war against the Markov syndicate. They dragged me through opulent corridors to a grand hall decked in Kostova family colors, a final mockery. A camera was set up before a dais, lights positioned for maximum dramatic effect. I was forced to my knees, hands bound behind me. Kristoff addressed the camera directly, spinning a tale of Markov treachery, of my kidnapping, of his failed attempt to save his beloved niece. Theater for whoever would witness this broadcast, allies, enemies, authorities. All carefully staged to ignite conflict that would consume the Bratva families, leaving only Orlov standing. As he spoke, I scanned the room, looking for any opportunity, any weapon, any hope. And there, at the far window, a shadow moved, then another. The first explosion took out the eastern wall, the second killed the lights. In the darkness, gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes illuminating chaos in strobing bursts. I rolled away from my captors, working desperately at my restraints. A figure appeared beside me, cutting the ropes with a swift movement. Stay low, a familiar voice ordered. Razin, Tavian's security chief. This way. He led me toward a side exit, providing covering fire as Orlov's men regrouped. We'd almost reached the door when Kristoff's voice cut through the din. Markov, I have your sister. I turned to see Kristoff holding Solène at gunpoint, his expression triumphant despite the blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Stand down or she dies. Movement ceased. In the sudden silence, I could hear Solène's ragged breathing, see the terror in her eyes despite her attempt at defiance. After all this time, Kristoff called, all your planning, it comes down to this, a choice, the Kostova girl or your traitor sister. From the shadows, Tavian emerged, weapon lowered but ready. His face was a mask of controlled fury, but his eyes, when they found mine, held something else entirely. Relief, fear, something deeper I couldn't name. Let them go, Orlov, he said, voice deadly calm. This is between us. There is no between us. There is only power. Who holds it, who takes it. Kristoff pressed the gun harder against Solene's temple. Your father understood that. Even as he died, he understood. Tavian took another step forward. My father was a monster. So are you, but it ends tonight. Yes, it does. Kristoff's smile widened. With your sister's brains on this expensive marble, unless you surrender the cost of a girl to me, final offer. I knew what Tavian would choose, had to choose. Solène was his blood, his family, despite her betrayal. I was What? An obligation, a responsibility, nothing more. But in that moment, I made my own choice. I lunged forward directly into Christoph's line of sight, drawing his attention and his aim away from Solan. His surprise gave Tavian the opening he needed. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession. Christoph's expression froze in shock as crimson spread across his chest. He staggered. Back, gun falling from lifeless fingers, body crumpling to the marble floor. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then chaos resumed as remaining Orlov forces attempted retreat or surrender. I turned toward Tavian, relief flooding through me, until I saw the second gunman, previously hidden, taking aim at his exposed back. "Tavian!" I screamed, throwing myself forward without thought. The impact knocked him aside as fire bloomed in my shoulder, pain eclipsing everything else. I heard Tavian's roar of fury, more gunshots, then his arms around me, lifting me, his voice urgent in my ear. "Stay with me, Elara, stay with me." "I'm fine," I managed, though darkness edged my vision. "Just a graze." Liar. His voice was rough with emotion as he carried me from the battlefield that had once been an elegant hall. Always so stubborn. "You came for me," I whispered, fighting to stay conscious. His arms tightened around me. "I will always come for you. Always." As medics swarmed around us outside, as the night filled with sirens and shouted orders, as pain and exhaustion dragged me toward unconsciousness, I held on to those words, the promise in them, the future they suggested. A future that against all odds we might both live to see. The intelligence arrived within hours of Elara's disappearance with Orlov. Not from my usual sources, they'd been compromised, but from long-dormant contacts, people who owed debts directly to me, not to the Markov syndicate. Orlov had taken her to his coastal estate, a fortress with 3 separate security systems, armed guards, water on 3 sides, impenetrable under normal circumstances. These were not normal circumstances. I called in every favor, every debt, every alliance. Men who hadn't worked together in decades united under a single purpose, the destruction of Christoph Orlov, not for Elara's sake, for mine. Because they feared what I would do if they refused. "The families won't all agree to move against Orlov directly," Vazin had argued. "The political implications—" "I don't care about politics," I'd cut him off. "I care about results. You're either with me or you're against me. Choose wisely." They chose wisely. 5 days of planning, 3 days of surveillance, systematic identification and elimination of Orlov's external security measures, careful infiltration of his domestic staff with my own people, patience, precision, inexorable progress toward a single goal. Then, the emergency broadcast, a burst transmission on a frequency only my team monitored. 3 words, in her voice. "Orlov Estate, Northeast Wing, Kostova." She was alive, fighting, finding ways to reach me even from within Orlov's grasp. The assault began at exactly 2:17 a.m., multiple points of entry, coordinated strikes, precision eliminating key security nodes. I led the main force myself, moving through the estate grounds like a ghost, death following in my wake. Not for vengeance now, not for territory or power or old blood debts. For her. Only for her. The broadcast room was our primary target. Intelligence suggested Orlov planned a public execution. Elara's death blamed on me, the catalyst for all-out war between families. We were minutes away when the first explosion rocked the East Wing, not one of ours, a diversion from within. "Sir," Razin's voice crackled through my earpiece, "the girl is moving, heading for the communications building." My heart seized. "Intercept, protect, get her out." Acknowledged. I pushed forward with renewed determination, cutting through Orlov's defenses with cold efficiency. Nothing mattered but reaching her, securing her, ending this 15-year nightmare once and for all. The grand hall loomed ahead, Orlov's ceremonial space decked in Kostova colors, a final mockery of the family he'd helped destroy. I entered through side corridors as chaos erupted, explosives taking out power systems, plunging the space into darkness, broken only by muzzle flashes and emergency lights. Through the chaos I saw her, kneeling bound on a dais, Orlov standing over her with theatrical cruelty. Rage nearly blinded me, but training prevailed. I signaled the assault team. watched Razin move to extract her while I engaged Orlov's personal guards. Then Orlov's voice, cutting through the din. "Markov, I have your sister." I turned to see Selene held at gunpoint, Orlov's weapon pressed against her temple. Despite her betrayal, despite the fury that still burned at her actions, my chest constricted. My sister, my responsibility, my failure. "After all this time," Orlov called, "all your planning, it comes down to this, a choice, the cost of a girl or your traitor sister." I stepped from the shadows, weapon ready but lowered. Across the ruined hall, my eyes found Elara's, wide with fear, but not for herself. For me. The realization struck with physical force. "Let them go, Orlov," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "This is between us." "There is no between us. There's only power. Who holds it, who takes it?" Orlov's weapon pressed harder against Selene's head. "Your father understood that. Even as he died, he understood." The mention of my father, the man who had set all this in motion, stoked embers of old rage. "My father was a monster, so are you, but it ends tonight." "Yes, it does." Orlov's smile widened with malicious intent. "With your sister's brains on this expensive marble, unless you surrender the cost of a girl to me. Final offer." The choice was impossible. Selene, for all her flaws, all her betrayal, was my blood, my responsibility since our parents' deaths, the sister I'd protected, failed, and still, despite everything, loved. But Elara, before I could decide, she moved, a blur of motion, placing herself deliberately in Orlov's line of fire. The distraction was enough. I fired 3 rounds in rapid succession, each finding its mark in Orlov's chest. His expression froze in shock as he collapsed, dead before he hit the marble floor. Relief lasted only seconds before Elara's warning shout reached me. "Tavian!" She threw herself forward as a shot rang out from my blind spot. Impact knocked me sideways as Elara fell against me, crimson spreading across her shoulder. Rage consumed me. I eliminated the second shooter with mechanical precision, then gathered Elara into my arms, her blood warm against my skin. "Stay with me, Elara," I ordered, voice raw with fear I'd never allowed myself to feel. "Stay with me." "I'm fine." Her attempt at reassurance was belied by the pallor of her skin. "Just a graze." Liar. I carried her through the battlefield, past surrendering enemies, toward the extraction point where medical teams waited. Always so stubborn. "You came for me," she whispered, fighting to stay conscious, fingers clutching weakly at my shirt. My arms tightened around her, this woman who had rewritten every rule I'd lived by, who had taken a bullet meant for me, who had somehow become the center of a world I'd built on vengeance and control. "I will always come for you," I promised. Always. Outside, as medics swarmed around us, as her blood stained my hands, as the night filled with the organized chaos of aftermath, I made silent vows I'd never thought possible. Not of vengeance or power or control, but of protection freely given, of truth without manipulation, of a future neither of us had dared imagine. The last Kostova. The heir to a dynasty thought destroyed. The woman who had somehow found her way past every defense, every barrier, to the heart I'd thought long dead. Mine to protect, yes, but more. Mine to serve, to follow, to love, if she would have me. If she could forgive what I had been to become what she needed. As they loaded her into a medical transport, her hand reached for mine, holding with surprising strength despite her injury. "Don't leave," she murmured, eyes fighting to stay open. I clasped her hand between both of mine, a promise in the touch. Never again. In that moment, covered in blood and surrounded by destruction, I understood a truth I'd spent 15 years denying. I had not saved Elara Kostova from the fire that night. She had saved me, from myself, from the man I was destined to become, and if given the chance, I would spend the rest of my life proving worthy of that salvation.